competed for 4 years with the national team, so from 1998 to 2002. And I had to retire prematurely because of a back injury. So I had a prolapsed disc in my L4-5 and L5-S1 vertebrae. And at that point, there was a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension. I mean, even up to now, it still affects me. Once in a while, I get a relapse, but I managed to identify when is the onset, and I've also managed to identify the different things that I do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to cope and manage with that.
Hello, audience. Today we have Alex with us. Hi, Alex. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey, Nishika. Okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own wellness business. So I actually manage the flagship and distributorship of the Novothor Light Pot. It's a recovery light pot. That's the only one in Asia. And before COVID happened, we were actually going to launch our own brand and launch our own franchise. But since COVID happened, it's currently circuit breaker in Singapore, and we've had to put that business growth plans on hold. Right. At the same time, I'm also running a not-for-profit passion project. It's called Kampung Collective, and essentially it's a community of community builders that I started just about the same time as I came out to run my wellness business. Yeah.
Okay. So I usually start the podcast with this question. I ask the guest about their childhood and their aspirations as a child. So can you tell us about that?
It's funny that you asked this question because what I'm doing right now has absolutely nothing to do with my aspirations as a kid, right? When I was growing up, I was always taking things apart and putting things together. So my parents would always say, this guy's going to be an engineer, right? So at some point in my life, I always thought that, I'm going to pursue a degree in engineering, and I don't know, at that time, growing up, it was the 80s. So, and being an engineer as a profession was a fairly lucrative one. So that was good, right? And then at some point, in between, either it happened concurrently or it happened after, I was a lot into animals, right? So we went to the zoo a lot, like once a month we would go to the zoo to look at the animals. It was more also for the nature element. My parents liked that. It was like a picnic of sorts. And I wanted to be a zoologist, right? So every time we went to the library, the books that I would borrow would be everything to do with National Geographic, everything to do with books, everything to do with nature. And that also, I think, yes, it was probably towards the later part of my childhood. And then I thought that, hey, being a zoologist might not be that viable because there's only one zoo in Singapore, and how many zoologists would they actually need, right? So I said, okay, I can become a veterinarian, right? And we had 2-3 dogs at home, right? So I had a lot of contact with pets and animals, and that was something that I really wanted to do. And but that changed after I got into junior high school. I was into sports, and sports suddenly became everything that I was doing, and I actually progressed into a more sports sort of career, which I actually right now still am. So yeah, that's what happened.
Okay. So after school, how was your college life, and what did you major in, and what were your expectations from college?
Okay. I'm an arts social science graduate. So I went to the National University of Singapore, and I've always been a science student. So in high school, in junior college, that's what they call it in Singapore, I was in the science stream because, of course, parents said it's good to study science. You have more options, and I stumbled into the faculty of social sciences, and I realized that, hey, I'm actually an arts inclined person, because I was going for all of these social science, political science, sociology, geography modules, and I was loving everything. And I loved the readings, I loved the citations, I loved the assignments that I had to do, right? And I realized that perhaps I was actually in the wrong field, or the wrong specialization at high school, but it didn't matter. So I really enjoyed going to college. Expectations really at that point, I was in my early 20s, right, late teens. I didn't really know what I wanted. At that point, I was playing water polo for Singapore. So I was training 11 times a week. Uh, Not much time for socialization, right? So at that point, it was really okay, complete my degree. And, I want to do something that can still get me involved in sports. I know for a fact that I do not want to be desk bound, so it could be a sales job, it could be a business development job, it could be something that required me to travel, but it wasn't something that I wanted to sit to be desk bound, right? And naturally, I was inclined towards if there was something that I could do purely just in sports. That is what I wanted to do. And I was fairly active in church activities. So I was fairly involved in the youth ministry. And I got along well with the teenagers and the kids. So together with people within my community, say, hey, Alex, perhaps you should consider a career in education, right? And specifically physical education, because that's what you're good at doing. So yeah, I applied to get into the physical education college, and I was successful, and I spent 2 years studying sports science, studying physical education, in terms of the methodology and the theory. And yeah, when I graduated, I spent my next 8 years as my first job in a high school. Yeah, so that's how I started with my first job as a teacher.
Okay, so were you all like always interested in sports and was a sports person, or was there a particular person or event that like basically triggered your interest?
I think I've always been fairly active, as a young kid. My dad put all of us, so there, I've got two other siblings, an older brother and a younger sister, and three of us were put through swimming class. We swam competitively for a club in school. We swam competitively for school, but the secondary school that I was in had the team sport of water polo, and that's how I ended up being in the team. And yes, from being in the school team, I progressed to being in the combined schools SWAT selection team, and then I ended up being in the national youth squad. I ended up being in the national youth team, and slowly, progressed to the national squad, and then representing Singapore in a couple of international events with the senior team. So there was a natural progression once I started doing the team sport. And yeah, I didn't have much opportunity to explore other sports until I became a PE teacher, right? And I was track and field, football, basketball, ultimate frisbee, touch rugby, hockey, so many other sports that I was exposed to. But I think that being an athlete, I having that natural ball sense, and the natural psychomotor skills, it was easier for me to pick up all these other sports. Although, being aquatics bound, water bound, is fairly different in terms of the physiology compared to being on land, where you're running on grass or running on the track, or even running on cement, right? But yeah, it's always been in me to as a sports person.
So how would you describe your typical training day back then when you were actively into competing?
Wow. Okay. Training starts at 5:30 in the morning. So a couple of us guys would carpool, those staying within the same area. At that time, there wasn't Grab. and Uber yet. If we had to take a taxi, we would take a taxi. Otherwise, we would be carpooling. And training would end about 7 o'clock. So people who needed to go to school would go to school. People who needed to go to work would go to work. And of course, for me, lectures might start at 9, lectures might start at 10, and I would make my way to the university, which is where we were training. So about 30 minutes away from where we were training. And in the evening we would train again at 6:30, and training would end by 9:30. By the time we were done showering and we would be grabbing dinner at 10:30. And if I need to do work, I'll be doing work. If I need to spend time with significant other, at the time I was dating somebody, we would spend time together. And sleep by 12, right? And the next morning at 5 a.m., 4:30, we need to be up again for the next training session. So I mentioned earlier, it's 11 times a week of training. So we only got it's double sessions every day, and only on a Sunday we would get one session of rest. Yeah, but of course this did not happen 365 days in the year. There would be blocks of rest. So we would train like that for maybe 3 months, and we would have 1 week of no training, or what we call active rest. So instead of doing the usual stuff, we would maybe meet for a game of football, or we would meet for a game of going for a run, right? So active rest, and then the cycle would continue again until perhaps we might be preparing for a pre-competition overseas games, or as a training stint, or maybe we would have a guest team arriving from another country to prepare ourselves for the competition.
Okay, so how would you describe your challenges? Like what obstacles did you face while you were competing and representing Singapore at an international level?
In terms of challenges, I guess it was knowing full well that all my peers and friends in school who were not training 11 times a week, they were having a very active social life. They would be chilling out at the cafe. They would be going for a movie. They would be spending the weekend in a nearby island, where they could just take a ferry out, but for us, we would actually be training, right? And we didn't have the sacrifices that we had to make would be sacrificing all of these social time uh, for the training hours that we put in, because we were planning for something at the end of the day. And it was easy to overcome because we were a team, right? There were at least 15, 20 of us doing it at the same time. And even though each of us were in different phases of our lives, right? Some people were studying, some people were in national service, some people were running their own businesses, some people were employees of a bigger company. So really the team camaraderie, and we're in this together. Doesn't matter how much we're suffering, we're looking at 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road. That is where we want to be, and that's how we manage to support each other along the way to I mean, on hindsight, when I look at it, I'm like thinking, how did I manage to do all of that? And it's really the teamwork, and meeting. We were meeting our teammates more and spending more time with our teammates than we were with for those who had a spouse, their spouse. For those who had a boyfriend or girlfriend, we'll be spending time with a significant other less, right? Or even with families, right? So yeah, those were the challenges, and I think it was easier to overcome the challenges just because we were doing things as a team.
Okay, so for how many years did you compete professionally?
I competed for 4 years with the national team, so from 1998 to 2002. And I had to retire prematurely because of a back injury. So I had a prolapsed disc in my L4-5 and L5-S1 vertebrae, right? And the injury was so severe that I couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days. The back was spasming all the time. I couldn't feel my toes. I couldn't feel my feet because of the impingement of the nerve. And yeah, I was in quite a lot of pain, right? So that was one reason why I stopped. I took a break for 5 years. So I did physiotherapy, I explored traditional Chinese medicine, I did osteopathy, a couple of other recovery modalities that I explored as well. And in the year 2006, so I left in 2002. In the year 2006, after 4 years, I actually tried to make a comeback. So I went for training again, and I was trying for the 2007 SEA Games. And I trained for 2 years with the team, and I didn't make the final cut. So the final cut, they were choosing 13 players out of 15. And I was one of the two that were cut from the final cut. And this was just 1 month before the competition. So spent really good time with the younger players, because 5 years later when I joined, I was already considered the oldest guy in the team. And no regrets, it was a good time spent. And I mean, water polo, I really love the sport of water polo. Water polo is my favorite sport, my favorite passion. And I even right up to now, I'm playing for a club recreationally. So there's a league that goes on in Singapore. It happens twice a year. Now we're even talking about possibly taking part in a masters competition that's not going to be in Singapore, but maybe it's going to be in China, maybe it's going to be in Hong Kong, maybe it's going to be in Thailand. So there are such competitions available for us to still be involved in. And yeah, I mean, of course, with COVID and the lockdown and travel restrictions, all of this might not be happening so soon, but that was the plan, right? Pre-COVID days.
Okay, so was there any what was your mental state when you were when you had the injury and you took a break?
What was my
Your
mental?
mental state, yeah. Well, like, was there any sort of you felt
Well,
a bit?
at that point there was a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you are young and you think that you're infallible, but the pain was bad. So things that were going on in my head were, oh no, if I
Mm-hmm.
try to push on, what if I get paralyzed from bottom down? What if I am faced with an irreversible injury that is
Mm-hmm.
going to affect me for the rest of my life? I mean, even up to now, it still affects me. Once in a while, I get a relapse, but I've managed to identify when is the onset, and I've also managed to identify different things that I do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to cope and manage with that. But yeah, so it was fear for sure. The fear was the main thing that got me to stop. And there was also the psychological, emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, because I spent so much time and effort trying to build my skills and trying to build my technique to be better than I always wanted to be. And suddenly something like that, just comes and shoots me down, and I'm down and out, right? So it took a while, I would say at least 2 years, for me to say that, okay, I, I feel good about whatever has happened, and I'm ready to start playing water polo again. So I totally was not involved at all for a good 2 years. And when I was training to be a PE teacher, I was asked to coach the university team, and at the same time also play. So that was the first time that I was back in the pool, and that got me all interested again, and saying that, hey, I think I'm well enough to train. And it was a year. So this was the university tertiary games, the varsity games, and we came in. We were silver medalists as a team, and it was extremely close fight. And as coach as well as player, it got me interested to say, hey, I think it's time for me to make come back. And slowly, I got back into the game. And in the year 2006, that's when I started playing again. Yeah. So
Okay. So like
that's my recovery journey.
when you wanted to make a comeback into competing actively again after 4 years, was there
Mm-hmm.
any kind of fear that was holding you back?
Mm, well, there was fear. I wouldn't call it fear. It was probably just some self-doubt, right? Or
Okay.
insecurities. Like, oh,
Okay.
I've been out of action for so long, how am I going to get back to where I was a couple of years back? And at the same time, I'm competing for a position or a slot with younger players who are
Right.
probably faster, bigger, stronger, where will I stand? But once I started, none of this mattered, right? Because it was really about the love for the game and the passion for the sport. And at the end of the day, even when I was not selected as the final 13 for the team, I didn't feel like I lost out, right? I didn't feel like, I should be there instead of the other guy, because the person that made the team was also my buddy and my friend. So everyone feels for it. I mean, it's just about someone being better than you. There's always going to be somebody better than you in anything that you're doing, and it's a matter of timing, I would say, and it's also a matter of timing, as well as I would say staying power, right? So how long was I prepared to continue playing, to be in there at the right time, to fill that position moving forward, right? So, but for me, after the 2 years training for it and not making it, I stopped competitive playing uh, playing competitively, and moved on to play at a more recreational club level. Yeah.
Okay. So was there also any side hustle or job you were doing while you were also actively competing?
When I was actively competing in university, in school, no, I was not. But when I was the second stint, right? When I was a teacher and I was also training, I started a F&B retail outlet in Singapore, and this actually did fairly well. I spent most of my weekends there if I wasn't training, and yeah, I mean, we sold the business after 3 years. There were three other business partners, and we did well. We did well. I'm quite proud of that business venture. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Singapore. So we were located along Haji Lane, which is currently quite a popular, trendy tourist as well as local attraction location. And when we started, we were the second shop to open. So this lane was
Okay.
actually a lane of warehouses, and there was nothing there, right? We were the second shop to open there, and slowly it became more bustling.
Mm-hmm.
Government injected more money and time into promoting the area, and yeah, we were fairly successful with that business. So that was my side hustle. In fact, it was um, my first foray into running a business and entrepreneurship.
Okay. So can you also tell us about your initiative, Kampung Collective, and your vision for it?
Sure. Yep. Kampung Collective, I mentioned earlier, is a community of community builders. My co-founder is Andy, and I met him when I was working for a co-working space. So my role prior to what I'm doing right now was general manager at Core Collective. Core Collective is a world's first fitness and wellness co-working space. And Andy, my co-founder, happened to be working for the sister company. So my founder at that time, my CEO, was also founder and COO of a traditional co-working space. And himself and myself, we were selected or to represent our respective co-working spaces to attend a co-working conference in India. So we were in Goa in February last year, right? And that's where it all started, right? We talked about, hey, you know, this role of a community builder is actually so misunderstood. There are people in the community building space that don't even know what they are supposed to be doing, right? The job description of a community builder is so different and disparate across different industries and different verticals. And people don't even, when some people who are not in the community building space, they think of community building as social services. But there's actually so much more to it, right? There could be community builders in online space, in the offline space, NGOs, profit, non-for-profit, you know, this gaming, co-working space, you know, face-to-face, so many variations. And we wanted to pull together all of these community builders under a same space where we would be a safe space where everyone could share ideas, bounce ideas, share challenges, and to learn from each other. And really, if you were to ask us what's our vision, it's to elevate the role of a community builder as a professional one. Currently, nobody in university thinks about, hey, when I graduate, I want to be a community manager.
Absolutely.
We want people to be thinking that way, and that, you know, it's not just going, when they go to business school, it's not just about being a HR manager, not just about being a marketing manager or finance, to go into finance. There is something called a community manager that they could possibly leave university and go and be to be a community builder or community manager, right? So that's something that we wanted or we want to happen. That's our vision. And we've actually established a couple of pillars that we have been following fairly closely. So we want to educate community builders to be better community builders. We also want to educate non-community builders to understand what is community building, because there's quite a lot. I get a lot of questions when I say that I'm a community builder. I say, what do you mean by community builder? Right? So when I explain, people understand. Say, oh, right, I understand. Right. So in the past, right, community building was probably something that was part of the role of maybe a social media manager. Okay, even before social media managers existed, it was all about the marketing manager, right? And when social media started coming into play with digital media, the marketing manager had to take on some of that role. And they realized that, hey, that role is too big for the marketing manager to do all on his own. And that's why a new role of a social media manager has come out. Similarly, with the community builder, in the past, maybe 20% of the work that somebody is doing is in community building. But right now, increasingly so, more and more people are realizing that, hey, you know, I need to focus on community and I need to have somebody doing that role. So some companies, they feel that, okay, maybe my social media manager can do that. He can do 50% of that on social media, 50% in community building. But we feel as Kampung Collective that this role needs to be a single headcount. And we also feel that there could possibly be even a department, you know, that is responsible for community building. If the company is progressive enough, right? Community could even be a pillar within the entire business values and business strategy. And everyone within the company or within the organization is a community builder. So we want to identify what are the skill sets and competencies that actually can make this happen. So that comes under educating. Gathering is another pillar that we have. So our mission to gather, whether it's in the online space, in the offline space, to gather people or community builders to get to know what each and every other person is doing in their respective different verticals, right, or industries. And we also want to connect. So by gathering people, naturally they would connect with each other, but we don't just want to connect people within the community itself. We want to be able to connect people from one community to the next. And we believe that in our lifetime, we could possibly be in as many as 5 to 10 different communities at the same time. And doesn't matter that the people within this community might never be a part of the other community, But if I know that somebody within this community needs a certain expertise or needs a certain information, and I know that somebody from another community could be able to provide that, then I will connect the two people together, right? And it's not about myself and Andy, both of us doing it. It's about sharing and letting everyone within our Kampung Collective community know that, hey, you know, you guys can do that too. It's not just us that will be able to connect you within the community, or whether it's connecting you from this community to another community, but every one of you are responsible and perfectly capable of doing that. Right. So it's also about a mindset change when most of the time, a lot of them are very focused on, I won't say a lot of them, but a lot of people are very focused on just their own community that they are most involved in and they are most engaged in. And they don't realize that, hey, you know, if I were to put two and two together, this person could actually benefit from that person. And all of these connections, we don't do it for money, right? It's really about, I really feel that you can help him. Let me put you in touch, right? And I don't need to receive any commission or kickback or whatever from it. Right? It's really because I feel that you will benefit from him, or he will benefit from you, and please, you know, you guys can take it to the next step. Right? So that's the connecting part, and the building part for us is really about building frameworks, building a playbook, potentially building even a community conference that is very centric to Asia, where community builders from Asia can all come together and learn from each other. And, you know, we would be getting speakers from, I don't know, from Europe, from the US, who are a lot more mature in terms of the community building aspect. And in Asia, we will be able to possibly understand and see what people have been doing there that have been successful, and over here, how can we adapt and adopt to specific to our culture, the Asian culture.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what is your approach that you follow so that your initiative can reach out to more people?
what is, sorry, can you repeat the question?
What is the approach you follow to make the initiative reach out to more people? Like, how do you tap them?
Right. Okay. So we have a closed Facebook group. Currently, we have about 400 people. We have been fairly active in the public space. So myself and Andy, we've been speaking on podcasts. We've been appearing in panel discussions representing Kampung Collective, and that's also where people get to hear of the name and be a bit curious to understand what it is. And we have been having a lot of organic traffic requesting to join us within this Facebook group. And that is good from a external people coming in point of view. From an internal, I would say, from an internal keeping together of the community, we actually have frequent sessions where it's specific to our community. So these events, whether it's panel speakers or whether it's keynote presentations, are only available for the people within our community, and it's not made public. So whatever we share, we want it to be, okay, it's because you are part of this group that you have privy to such information. Of course, at the end of the day, the information, we would share it anyway, but we want to just keep it to be slightly exclusive in that sense. And because of the way that we've structured it, we've had quite a lot of people joining us, not just from Singapore, right? We've reached as far as India, right? So India, China, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia as well. And yeah, these are the countries that we have representation from at Kampung Collective, and we will continue to be doing whatever we're doing and continue to build. And once these processes and frameworks and infrastructure is built, that's when we will be able to share a lot more, and hopefully to be opening it up to more people. But we don't want to make it too accessible and available for just anybody to come and join, because we want to make sure that we curate the right people. We want to make sure that we have community builders within the group who are really interested about finding out more about how they can be better community builders. I know that there are a lot of groups out there where people might be within the group, for a sales reason, right? Or they are trying to tap on a new customers, so maybe for business development. But we try to refrain from having such activities.
Okay. So, how would you describe the importance of building the right community and being in the right community, not just as an individual, but as a person working for a startup or a company?
How do you identify the... Sorry, you repeat the question again. How do you identify the right community?
Yeah, the right
Not
community,
just...
and the importance of being in a right community. Like, how can that help you?
Okay, I think that most importantly is to identify what's the vision, right, and the values of the community. So whether I am starting my own community or whether I am part of another community, if the vision and values are not aligned to where I want to be or where I want to go, then it doesn't make sense for me to be a part of that community, right? So that's the first most important thing that anybody has to establish. The second thing is to understand what are the needs of the community. And if you don't know what the community needs, then you're never going to be able to provide what the community needs. So if you don't provide what the community needs, you're not going to get the engagement. If you're not going to get the engagement, then you're not going to have people staying. People will just leave and disappear, right? And as somebody running the community, you are also feeling that, hey, why am I doing this in the first place when there's nobody that's within my community that's being engaged? So yeah, it's really about understanding alignment. And next would be what are the needs, right? And of course, to add on, to understand what the needs are, there needs to be frequent check-ins, right? Whether it's formal or informal, it could be surveys, it could be just casual chats, face-to-face, online, whatever. But this formal and informal sort of feedback needs to be done. Otherwise, you will not understand what the community needs, and you will not be able to provide the right value, right, for the community to want to continue being a part of the community. And this applies to whether it's as an individual or whether it applies for a business.
Okay. So, how would you describe your best experience working all these years as a community builder?
Actually, I didn't realize that I was a community builder until recently, right? So I read What's Your Why by Simon Sinek. And the other catalyst for me was really the birth of my little girl. So my girl is almost 2 years old, so she's 21 months old. And when she was born, I realized that, hey, I want to be spending as much time with her during the formative years as possible. And I don't want to be going into work at 7 a.m. and coming home at 10 p.m. because then what sort of timing am I good? How much time am I going to be spending with my girl? So the opportunity to run my own business and be an entrepreneur also allowed for me to have greater flexibility, right? And with greater flexibility, I have been able to spend so much more time with my little girl, and I have no regrets, right? With the current situation, okay, pre-COVID days situation, of course, my revenue and income is nothing compared to having to be a employee of a company, but I see this as a longer term plan as opposed to a short term plan. And I'm confident of the uh, time that I put in as well as the planning that I put in. And I'm confident that the future has a lot more in store based on what I have been doing for not just myself, but for my family.
Okay. So, what is that one lesson that being a sportsman has taught you?
I would say definitely is the tenacity and perseverance, right? So as I've been with sports and at playing at a really high level, I failed many times before, right? I failed because I didn't manage to score a goal.
Right.
I failed because I made a bad pass and therefore the opponent scored the goal and therefore
Mm-hmm.
we lost the game because of me, right? So the weight is all on my shoulders and I'm to blame, right? I failed because I didn't meet specific times. I didn't meet specific goals, at whether it's at training or whether it's at competition. So all of these failures actually have prepared myself in terms of the mental resilience, the mental toughness, and no amount of failure that I am facing or I have faced, whether in my personal life or in my professional life, uh, is going to put me down to not be able to bounce back up. I might not be immediate, right? I could be moping around and feeling sorry for myself for a couple of hours or a couple of days, but I know how to get back up. And I'm not going to be depressed for a long period of time and not be able to step out of it. So I think that for sure is my the number one thing that has benefited me as a sports person, and which is one reason why also that I hope and I want my daughter or my children to be involved in a team sport, and hopefully they are able to be performing it at a high enough level for them to experience all of these knockdowns, failures, and setbacks, such that when they go out in life, and whether it's work or personal, they're never going to be knocked down uh, by whatever failures or setbacks, and it's going to be easier for them to come up and come back up from wherever they've been feeling down. Yes.
Okay. And what is your any new habit or hobby you've adopted during the lockdown?
Oh, so since my little girl came on, I haven't been on routine for my exercise, and I managed to get back on to a good routine. Um, I run 3 times a week. I'm involved in. I do my burpees, my push-ups, my core exercises. So I'm in good physical shape at the moment, and I've been able to be fairly productive. I started writing. So I wrote my first article on LinkedIn, which I published, and I also published on Medium. And I already have at least 10 more in the pipeline where I'm writing and I'm going to be publishing. So I found my writer's voice, right? And that's something that I feel very, very happy about. And yeah, it's really about um, articulating and communicating all of my thoughts and all of my reflections and experiences, and putting it down and sharing it out on the internet. And you never know whether people might be reading it and it might apply to them, it might benefit them. So yeah, that for me, I like the pay it forward attitude, and that the cup is always half full, right? So during this lockdown period, I committed to writing one LinkedIn recommendation per day to my closer LinkedIn contacts. And initially, of course, the lockdown or circuit breaker in Singapore was only for 30 days. So to me, I thought, hey, no problem, 30 guys, it's easy. But then we extended by a month. So I'm still on track right now. So today is day 49. I have written 49 recommendations for my closer contacts, and I've got another 7 more to go, because it's 56 days of the circuit breaker. So everything goes back to phase one of normal on the 2nd of June. And that's also when my business will be able to start. So yeah, this is something that I committed to. I'm really proud of having managed to keep to it. And I'm also very happy that this spreading of positivity with the LinkedIn recommendations have surprised many people. And they are also, like, hey, thanks so much for this. I didn't realize you thought this about me, or, I thank you for affirming, this. So people like to know, even if they know about it themselves, they like to hear it from somebody else on how they actually are, or what they actually are like to people or other people, the third party. Yeah. So those are my takeaways.
Okay, and what is your suggestion for the people who are struggling mentally during the lockdown and they're struggling to be productive?
I think productivity has a lot to do for me with a couple of things. Of course, it's a routine, right? So if you wake up every day not knowing what you want to do for the rest of the week, then it's going to be a little bit difficult to keep to things and to count the days, right? Because with the lockdown, there's so many you sometimes you feel that you don't know what day it is, or you find that time passes really slowly. But if you have a routine and you have lots of time stipulated to do specific things, that for sure is a good productivity hack. Exercise for me works, right? Start the day early, go for a run. I like to get my sunlight. So I believe, so the business that I do, which I mentioned earlier, is red light therapy. And I haven't been able to get any red light from my machine because my machine is locked up in my facility. But sunlight also helps with photobiomodulation, which is the term that we use for red light therapy. And I get my sunlight in the morning when I exercise. And for me, a lot also has to do with breath work. So learning how to breathe, or relearning how to breathe, actually helps to calm your nerves, calm your senses, helps you to de-stress and increase parasympathetic activity. So it's really about the central nervous system understanding and knowing how your body needs to function. And yeah, so if you ask me, productivity for people in this time, routine, exercise, get your sunlight, don't stay indoors, right? If you can't get out, draw the curtains, get some sun, open the windows, get some sunlight from wherever you are, sit in the sun for a couple of minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? You could be having your breakfast, having a coffee, or maybe even reading a book with the sun shining on you, right? Not the harsh afternoon sun, right? Morning sun would be best, anything before 9 a.m., right? And breath work, because breath work really helps, right? And I track my heart rate, I track my heart rate variability. I know what are the things that can help me de-stress, and these have actually helped me be more efficient and productive in the work that I do. And I mean, the business that I'm in is in recovery, it's in wellness. So I need to be able to be walking the talk with my life, to be able to share the same with my clients and customers.
So, can you also tell the audience about the importance of nutrition, especially when we're locked in our houses and we're not being very active?
I believe in a balanced diet, right? So nutrition is for sure important. If you are locked up in the house, you shouldn't be eating microwave frozen food all the time. If you can, you should be ordering in. If you can, go to the market or supermarket to get fresh produce, that'll be good. If you can't leave the house, you can always order in. It's important to get whole foods, right? So whole foods need not necessarily be whole foods that are raw. It could be whole foods that you can cook on your own, right? So if, of course, maybe you can't cook every day, so ordering in half the time is fine. But getting whole foods and getting fresh produce, for me, I think would be number one nutrition tips for me. I mean, I don't follow a strict diet or a strict routine or a specific type of diet, right? So, and I think that I function perfectly fine. I don't take any form of supplements. I don't need to and I feel that I get all my vitamins and minerals from the whole foods that I eat and I take. Of course, once in a while you can cheat and have your processed food. You can have your junk food, right? But 90% of the time, it's really about whole foods and fresh produce for for me.
Right. And especially I feel in a situation like this, immunity is very, very important now that we're dealing with a virus like the coronavirus. So
Mm-hmm.
whole food should
Mm-hmm.
really be the priority.
For sure, yes. And I think it's because everybody is home, they shouldn't be exposed to any flu virus or whatever virus. So they should not be falling sick at all during this
Right.
lockdown.
Mhm.
And if they are having good nutrition and also managing their mental state, it would be a good time for rest, right? And a good time for reflection and a good time, to say, when the lockdown is over, I'm ready to start afresh and ready to push forward, for whatever 3 month, 6 month, 12-month goals that they have planned. I mean, no doubt there's still uncertainty because, we
Right.
don't know about travel restrictions. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know about when businesses could possibly be starting. But it's good to have that plan such that you can, and plans can always be flexible, right? So you have that plan, it's flexible based on whatever's happening around the world or whatever government restrictions are put in place in every specific country.
Absolutely. So, what is that? What is the one book or movie you would suggest the audience to read?
Uh, uh, I don't, I'm not much of a movie goer, so it's a bit hard for me to answer that question. In terms of book, I think anything to do with biohacking would be something I would recommend for people to explore. Not going to be specific to a book or specific to a writer or author, but understanding what biohacking can do for you as an individual definitely is going to increase productivity and increase efficiency. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Can
in
you
this
tell
day and
us
age where
can you tell us about biohacking a bit more?
Okay, so biohacking is really understanding how your body could function or optimize better based on certain habits or lifestyle changes that you can do to help you. And diet is one of them, right? So a particular type of diet that could biohack your body system to function better, right?
Okay.
Red light therapy is something that also is beneficial for as a biohacking. So red light therapy helps to improve your sleep. So when you sleep better, naturally you feel more refreshed. Naturally, you will be more productive and efficient when you wake the next day. Um, in terms of the way, so breath work is also something to do with biohacking, and that is something that people can explore. There are many different types of breathing techniques that you can understand and learn, and it's all available, easily available for people to learn and understand, right? And yeah, so these are some of the things that people would be able to optimize their well-being a lot better if they understand what could benefit their body. It's not just about nutrition, right? It's about all these other things that you could add to your life to help your body be to optimized.
Right. So I believe this is a very unique concept to us, and the listeners will definitely look upon that. And so,
Sure, yeah. I mean, one person to always uh, look into is Dave Asprey. So Dave
right,
Asprey is quite prolific in the research that he's done, and he is quite a thought leader in the realm of biohacking.
okay. So also I would like to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
for the listeners, how do we reach out to you and be a part of the Kampung Collective and just
Okay.
know about your community? How can we do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I am
Okay.
fairly active on LinkedIn. So, just drop me a message on LinkedIn. And yeah, we can connect there. And the Kampung Collective is a closed group on Facebook. So if you were to search Kampung Collective, you will be able to find us. And you can also request to join the group. And we are, although we are selective in our criteria, if you are a genuine community builder, we would definitely welcome you into the group. Yes.
Okay, so what are the criteria you consider about a person before letting him or her be a part of the community?
Well, there are certain key questions that we ask in terms of what community are you in, and what does community building mean to you. So it's very simple questions that anybody can answer if they are existingly within the community or building a community, right? So simple questions like this, and we also request for people who want to join the group to send a link of their LinkedIn profile so that we can also understand who is this person as a professional,
Okay.
whether he's a business owner or whether he's an entrepreneur, or yeah, what is the sort of involvement he is in a professional capacity.
Okay, so thank you. Also, yes, one last question. Your one advice to people, um, just so they can get through the lockdown.
My one advice to the people. Hmm, well, the lockdown, okay, one advice would be to plan for post lockdown, right?
Yeah,
So if you have something, if you to have to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think it's a lot easier than to count the days to post lockdown, right?
right.
So if you have a 3 month, 6 month, 12-month plan at the end of the tunnel, whether it's something that you want to achieve in a personal capacity. Maybe I want to be able to learn a particular language, or or want to be able to tidy up my house and give it a new coat of paint, right? Or for in a professional capacity, right? To be able to get X number of followers on my social media account, or to post X number of pictures or whatever, or to write X number of articles, right? Yes, or to attend X number of business courses. So if you plan that ahead, and for the light at the end of the tunnel, it's going to be a lot easier to pass the days. So that would be my
Okay.
tip of the day for that.
And one quote or saying that you live your life by.
One quote or saying that I live my life by. I just wrote this the other day, so I'm just going to re-quote it, right? So people say that the experiences of life make you who you are. I'd like to take it one step further by saying that it's the relationships that you build through the experiences that actually make you who you are. And
Right.
I'm somebody that's all for relationship building, and I believe that every opportunity that we have to meet somebody new could potentially be something really powerful that might happen 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, right? So building authentic relationships through our respective experiences in our life's journey, I think that is something that is very, very important and crucial for me.
Okay. So thank you so much, Alex, for giving us the time. And I'm
My
sure,
pleasure, Nishika.
you will be able to add value to the lives of the listeners with this new concept of community building and the importance of nutrition and red light therapy you talked about.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.